Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast, a conversation aimed at understanding all sides of mental health, addiction recovery, and homelessness. Each interview will include one's personal experiences and insights, or an expert's advice and knowledge within one of these fields. The goal is to promote awareness, guidance, and support for anyone who is affected by these challenges. Thank you all for listening. Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast. This is your host, Brendan Cutuli. We are here today for Season 2, Episode number 16 with Tracey Maxfield. Tracey has 37 years of experience as a nurse, along with being certified in gerontology and dementia care. Tracey experienced clinical depression in her 20s with an acute episode in 2015. And after encouragement by a psychologist, Tracey began a blog called Escaping the Rabbit Hole, which is now a published book. Tracey joins the Mental Insights Podcast to speak about mental health challenges and bullying within children. So, Tracey, thank you for taking this time to be with me today.
My pleasure. I'm very honored to be on your show.
I'm so happy that we're able to make this happen and really speak about such important topics that, are happening within our society today. And, to really start off and, to share a little bit about what you've experienced and, obviously then transition in terms of, how you've been able to help people throughout, writing your book and providing resources for others, to really start off just, even if it wasn't, this struggle, this, low that you've had within your life, when did you really learn the importance of mental health and, why it's so crucial in consideration to physical health, as we say, of, eating and exercising?
So I've always been interested in mental health. When you read my bio, I'm also a certified dementia care specialist, and so the brain has always intrigued me. Certainly after I had my initial depressive episodes in my late 20s, and then I think it was probably in my early 40s, I was becoming more aware of what's happening around you and what you're internalizing can have a detrimental impact on your mental health. But to be perfectly honest, it really wasn't until my last episode in 2015, when I had an acute depressive episode related to workplace bullying and plummeted down the rabbit hole, did I truly understand the brain-body connection.
It's certainly something of value. And I think, as you're saying, like it's something that hasn't really been brought about within, the last few years, that people are really speaking about, this mind-body connection of the true importance of its, necessity, and why you have to focus on both and not negate one or the other. And, within this realm, I think just speaking about how prevalent, mental health challenges are today, the Mental Health Commission stated that an estimated 1.2 million children and youth in Canada are affected by mental illness. Yet,
and less than 20% receive treatment.
That's
Isn't that scary? Isn't that scary? I know. And this is not just in Canada. This is a problem that's happening globally. And it was, when I wrote my book, it was to actually help other people going through a depression and to let them know that they weren't alone, because my depression was so bad, unlike the other depressions I had, that it took me a while to recognize what was happening. Because in my book, I said I thought I was having a stroke because of the physical effects that I was having, as well as the emotional and mental. And it's through the book, and primarily it was the illustrations in the book. So if people haven't seen my book, they can go on my website, and all the illustrations are on the website. And I use those in place of words. When words aren't necessary, there is a figure, just a simple black and white, and it conveys everything that you need to know about how I was feeling that day. But the pictures resonated with kids, with teenagers especially, and that's how I moved from promoting my book and talking about depression globally in adults to, oh my goodness, let's focus on kids, because of the stories they shared with me when I met with them. I was absolutely dumbfounded and horrified I would say, that there are so many of them that are dealing with so many issues, and they're not even allowed to have a childhood anymore. I mean, when you have a 5-year-old attempting suicide and a 9-year-old cutting themselves and is so depressed, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, like, how did they get the strength and the courage to move forward into adulthood? How did they even begin to figure that out? And so that's when I had I call it my light bulb moment. It was, okay, you've just had 63 kids come and confide in you about what they're going through in the world, and they don't even know who I am. They just called me the lady who escaped the rabbit hole. And it's, a friend kept saying, that's your mission. That is a message that's being sent to you. You've got to start helping these kids. And here I am.
It's truly incredible. And, as it's been such a crisis, and as you're saying, there's such a staggering amount of people that are facing these challenges, yet, clearly aren't getting the resources that they need. And, even, we're saying 20% don't receive appropriate care, but there's still many out there that aren't even getting treatment in general, and it's happening at such a young age. I want to know, from your perspective, what is a problem that you see within the mental health care field, and what could be changed within this industry?
So my big thing is, and I think it's after decades of nursing, I believe you need to deal with problems upstream and stop dealing with the catastrophes that happen downstream. And we know there's been enough research that is now showing the effects of toxic stress or traumatic stress on kids. I'm a huge proponent of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, which they're now showing the more ACEs a child experiences, the increased likelihood of having a mental illness, not in adulthood, but actually by the time they're a teenager. And, we know the effects of bullying and social media and cyberbullying. And so we're aware of all that. And I think that as a society, definitely we need to bring in more education. I am a huge believer that mental health and mental wellness needs to begin as soon as a child goes to school, because kids no longer know how to deal with stress and failure, because we have a society where they're comparing themselves to everyone else and they want to be like them and be better than them. And no one knows what it's like if you don't pass that exam, or if you don't get into the high school football team. We need to start teaching mental wellness and strategies, how to deal with failure and anxiety and stress and not having a good day. And I think that's going to help kids become stronger and better equipped to deal with the curveballs that life's throwing at them. Because kids today, I mean, you're much younger than me, and I can't even imagine the world that kids and teenagers are growing up in today, but they're dealing with curveballs that are insurmountable when you think their brains are still growing and developing. They don't have the skill set, and yet they're dealing with adult situations. Mm-hmm. And as adults, we're finding it hard to deal with them. How are we expecting our kids to, if we're not giving them the skill set and the strategies to start dealing with that and trying to figure it out? And so I'm a huge, let's start at the beginning. We've really got to look at what kids are being taught in school again, because as you know, in lots of schools, playtime is abandoned. And we know how important play is in life. And it's a way of learning to negotiate and share and understand. And I think we've almost got to get back to some grassroots here with education and bringing up a new generation of kids.
It's definitely, a great advice and great topic that can be spoke about more, because, it's those things like you're saying of just, getting out and having this connection with other people, whether it's playtime or whether it's just, this communication aspect. It's like you're saying, it's grounding yourself. It's doing some of the basic human necessities that we overlook, given we're in a society today where you see a lot of these children have, phones, dealing with social media, dealing with these expectations of
Oh,
what their
huge.
parents want them to become, or maybe what their peers are doing and how they can live up to the expectations of being similar or being better than. And
Yes.
there's so many different ways of, how it kind of pulls us back. And as well, there's other things such as, a large experience, whether it's, a death or a trauma at a young age, that a lot of people, whether it's, direct towards them or whether it's within, their connections, that can play a large cause within, their emotional well-being. And I want to know, like, how can a large emotional barrier such as, a loss of life or such a traumatic experience affect one's mental health, at a young age, but as well the transition that it could have throughout, years of development. And, as you're saying, if it's downstream, then, somebody might not receive treatment until years after they experience this, whether it's a sense of loss or whether it's, a traumatic experience with someone else. It can have a crucial role in the child's development.
Absolutely. And I mean, we know there's been enough research, and I talk about it all the time in my videos and blogs, is that any kind of trauma, if it's not handled appropriately, whether or not it's a young child or a teenager, shapes the way that child not only perceives themselves, but perceives the world around them. And I mean, so I'll go for the extreme example, but something that kids are dealing with more frequently: school shootings.
Mhm.
Now, a school shooting is a horrific experience. But even if in the school you've not had to deal with it, the fact that kids now are being taught duck and cover and what they need to do if someone enters the school, and then it goes on lockdown and parents are not allowed to communicate with them, that is a trauma that's happening to our kids every single day, especially in classrooms in the United States.
Mhm.
What we know is that this trauma, so it's the flight, fight, fight mode, and you're very familiar with that, right? It's an awesome thing because it's danger, right? Oh my God, that kid's got a knife. I need to run and get help. If you didn't have it, it wouldn't be a good thing. But what's happening is we're putting our kids perpetually in flight, fright, fight mode. And this stress triggers out so many inflammatory chemicals. And because the brain and body is connected, they go right through the body. Think from the head down to the toes. There's inflammation. And unless we reset that flight, fight, fight, they're hypervigilant and they're just very cautious. And the thing is that video games does that automatically, so it just makes things worse. If they live in a bad neighborhood where there's drug deals or shootings or gang violence, escalated again. If they're being bullied, escalated again. And every cell in the body is being flooded with this. So your brain doesn't grow properly and develop properly. And you'll have musculoskeletal and headaches and high blood pressure and stomach pains and nausea. And you have all these physical side effects. And then if you haven't got anyone sitting down with you and saying, this must be really tough. What is it like when you go home and and you go up to the street and there's a drug deal going on and you're really fearful for your little brother? If there's no one that's sitting down and talking to them and explaining, what can they do to make themselves safe? How can they make themselves strong enough to deal with it? They'll learn what they see. So if in the neighborhood they find that violence will enable them to deal with it, and no one tells them otherwise, that's what they're going to do. If they see that someone says, oh, take a drink, just have a beer. I know you're 9, but have a beer and a cigarette. That'll help you cope. Kids, they will pull on anything they need to try and help them deal with the pain and the confusion that's going on. And if you have parents that are just ignoring them or saying, oh, you're being hypersensitive or overreacting, parents need to ask themselves, why is their child? Or if you feel they're overreacting, why do you think they're overreacting? What is going on? Because just saying, oh, please, you're fine, don't worry about it, you're overreacting, doesn't mean that problem has now gone away. Now that kid is saying to themselves, oh my God, I'm going crazy. What's wrong with me? I'm abnormal. No one, everyone else thinks it's okay. So it's just me. And this self-persecution just goes on and on and on. If we haven't dealt with it, they're going to go down a slippery slope when they're a teenager. By the time they get into adulthood, chances are they're not already dead. They're going to be addicted in a gang, or they're going to be in the penal system, right? We know that. We have the stats. And this, it's like, yes, only 20% receive appropriate treatment. What on earth is going to happen to those 80% that are not receiving treatment for whatever reason? What are we going to do to try and help them? And yes, it begins at home, but we also have to put responsibility in school, because the majority of your young life is in school, but I also think it's a community problem. It takes a village to raise a child. We have to go back to that.
Certainly, it's definitely a great thing to bring about, and there was definitely many great insights within there. And as you're a child, as you're saying, you develop these kind of responses to whether you're in fear, or whether you've been distressed, whether you've faced something of a challenge, and you create these responses. And as you're saying, if whether it's your parents, whether it's your teachers or peers say, okay, that's okay, you're going to be fine. This is, again, this is a mechanism that is stuck within your brain in order to tell you that this is a coping mechanism that will be fine. And unless you break that cycle, it's going to continue. And, as you stated, as you get older, it's only going to progress into worse things, especially if you're around a toxic environment, whether it's, substances, whether it's violence, or even whether it's, physical abuse. There's so much at play. And you see this perpetually through people who experience these traumatic challenges, that it's a simple cycle that you need to break, but it's so challenging in order to break it unless you're completely aware. And as well, unless, as you're saying, there's education in place, whether the environment at home is appropriate, whether your parents are providing the means in order to understand what you're going through. There's so many things at play. And as you're saying, it all starts with community. It all starts within, looking within ourselves and looking within other people in order to lift each other up.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I think the struggle is that I've learned, after my last depressive episode, and then I did a couple of courses on ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I'm adding up my ACE score, and I'm looking at it going, how did I not have depression? Like, right? The writing is on the wall. The thing is, I think that's different with kids today, is what they are being exposed to at an early age, because we know that, okay, we have the school shootings, we have an increase in criminal activity, we have human trafficking, we have the drugs, but also what they're seeing on the news and on social media with riots and the migrants coming from Syria and Mexico and everything that's going on there. They're seeing such horrible, negative, bad news, like global warming, the coronavirus. They're seeing all this is being thrown at them, and everything is stressful and negative and not good. How does this give them hope for the future?
It's certainly such a challenge, and they look within themselves in order to find some of these answers, because they're not given it from any authoritative person. And especially with how information is provided today, like as you're saying, it's all here's the negative, here's not what's going on well within our society today. And that creates that perception of there's nothing good, there's nothing going on. And I think even within that, and within this industry, within mental health, within the society today, it really is a lot of people speaking about what people are struggling with and what's going on. And kind of on the flip side, there are services, but we've kind of stuck with just the same ones that are going on today, where it's therapy and medication. And it doesn't seem like there's many new realms or new opportunities that we're talking about in order to effectively treat people besides just these self-help measures of, your lifestyle changes, your lifestyle activities, habits, and routines. And, from your experience, what really could we do to try to, shift this message of, this negativity within what's going on, and try to bring that into maybe a new therapeutic measure in order to, help heal some of, what people are facing today?
I mean, I'm a huge advocate of the holistic route. We have to treat everything. So we're looking at everything, not only from a physical and emotional, but from a spiritual and a social. And all of that plays into trying to give the best opportunities to your child or teenager. So, yes, I mean, therapy, absolutely, there is a role for therapy. In some instances, there is a role for medications. Sadly, I think we've become a nation where and we have parents to blame here as well, where it's like, he's got this, then just give him a pill. I don't want to deal with it. I haven't got time. I'm too busy. Just give him a pill. Mental illness or mental disorder, yes, like the schizophrenia or the bipolars, you will be on medication for the rest of your life. But anxiety, depression, OCD with short-term medication and even therapy, and then introducing life skills. I call them life skills. It's strategies that will help the child and help the family, because it's a family issue. It's not little Joey who's 11. This is a family issue. And it's, when I say holistic, so again, it's diet, it's fluids, it's exercise, it's social connection, it's spiritual connection if that's important to you, it's family time, it's that one-on-one taking time, it's encouraging your child to express their thoughts and feelings because lots of kids, they don't want to talk, right? Oh, I'm fine, leave me alone. So express it in music or art or poetry or journaling or something, creative expressions. It's going back to, as a family, not only having the importance of family time, but also one-on-one time, but it's talking about relaxation and mindfulness, and really what are the values this family hold dear and what are important to them, and how can they work together to help the child but also continue to evolve and move forward. And we're slowly getting to that point, I think. Lots of schools are now introducing meditation. That 30-minute quiet time. Lots of schools are introducing, as soon as you go in, you pick something out of a basket, and you don't have to identify who you are, but you can put it on the board, and it says, I am feeling sad today, I am feeling down today, I don't feel right today. And it gives an opportunity for that discussion to then take place in the classroom. And even if you're not the child feeling sad, I think it's gaining more awareness that the other kids sitting there can understand that, okay, there's someone in this class that's not doing so well, and bringing kindness and respect and compassion. But yes, I think what we have to realize is therapy and medications will give you the groundwork, but if you're not prepared to do the rest of the work and have the support of friends or family or siblings, then it's going to be a tough road.
It certainly is. And I think that's one thing that you see a lot of people speak about is, when they faced a challenge and then they go through therapy and they're on medication, they say, why isn't my life changing? Why don't I feel better? And, I always look to myself, and, it's hard to really tap into that person and provide a new perspective for them, because they don't see why their life is changing, but they really haven't, put the effort in outside of what's been, provided to them as that groundwork, as you're saying. And I think that's one thing that really has to change is, trying to hold yourself accountable. And also on the flip side too, there's, within this theme of community, within this theme of, trying to, support each other, I think one thing that is definitely of, a challenge within, especially people at their youth, is they try to really blame themselves for an issue, or your family can blame them, saying, you were the cause of the problem. Like, you were the reason as to, why you experienced that trauma, or why, I physically abused you, or emotionally or physically. Like, that's why someone did it, because it was your, like, it was due to you. And I think that's one thing that is so challenging in not only yourself learning to accept what you went through and understanding that you weren't the reason that this happened, but as well people around you. And, from your perspective, how can we really try to navigate that realm of learning the acceptance of you're not really responsible of what you endured throughout your childhood, especially with some of these instances of traumatic issues of a loss, or a school shooting, or a physical abuse. How can you really teach someone and allow the resources for them to learn that they weren't in control, they weren't responsible for this, and navigating that realm of acceptance in order to move through that healing process.
And it's tough. It is tough. And again, I think it's therapy where it's allowing that person to understand that there are bad people in the world, or even if we don't want to use bad, there are people that have some challenges and issues, and that they imposed unacceptable behavior on the child or the teenager, whoever it is. And it's it's hard work. It's hard work because there's so much embarrassment and shame attached to it, especially if there's abuse. I was initially physically, and then I was horrendously emotionally abused as a child. And the blame it was always me, always me, always me, always my fault. And that shaped me. And it's only, I would say, in the past 5-6 years have I finally come to a place of understanding that it actually was not me. Because ultimately, when you have a child, you are now their parents or their caretakers, and you have a responsibility to not only protect your child, but also to help shape them and help them develop skills to grow older and go into adulthood. And it's teaching them that it's really getting back to, you have to go into the brain health with the child and understand that your brain was not even fully developed. You knew instinctively that this was wrong, but whether or not it was threats, blackmail, even adoration, whatever it was, but this behavior was still wrong. And it's moving to a place where the child is actually able to forgive themselves. That's what it boils down to. It's forgiving myself because I did what I had to do to survive at that time. I knew it was not right, but it was not my fault. He or she was old enough to have known better. And it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work. And some people can move to the point where they can forgive the other person. But I think it's more, you have to forgive yourself. And it's helping the child or the teenager recognize that, and that they were not the cause of it. And it's reframing. And then I think it's introducing the good that's in the world, because it shapes them. It shapes them that all people are like that, or all men who look like this uncle are going to be like that. And as I said, it's an ongoing process, and therapy can help you. But if you don't have the support system in the community to keep helping you move forward, and in helping you enhance and develop the skills and the healthy mindset, it's really difficult. And as I said, it's, oh, I feel so heartbroken at what kids are having to deal with today. It's it's shockingly horrendous, and there's no there's no easy answer. You
Certainly,
know,
but yeah.
I think it's it's what you're doing, it's what I'm doing, it's what hundreds and thousands of people out there are. We kind of are the quiet unsung heroes, if you want to use that term, maybe, of we're trying to create education, we're trying to empower people, we're trying to say what you're going through is normal. It's going to take time. You will heal, you will recover. You need to do this work though, because popping a pill and going to therapy is not going to be the cure all. If you really want to be a well person, you need to start healing within and moving forward. It's sending the message to kids, you did not cause this. You did not do this. Just because you weren't friends with Joe and Joe came to school the next day with a gun and threatened people did not mean that you were the reason. Ultimately, people are in control of their own behaviors, and it's that understanding, because we love to not victimize ourselves, but we know, as we all feel a need to be loved and validated and appreciated, that's a core sense of being human, and for children and teenagers more so, because they're trying to make sense of everything that's going on in the world. Yeah. If somebody comes to you today and gives you 8 wonderful positive comments, and then another person comes along and says something really horrible about you, chances are you'll dwell on that one negative comment and forget about the 8 positive affirmations you received. And that's where we've got to change the mindset of, okay, so what you said was mean, and you're entitled to your own opinion, but you don't really know me. And I have 8 people that have just said to me, actually, you did a good thing and you're a nice person. So I don't need you in my life, and you're not adding value to my life. So thank you for your thoughts. Goodbye. And this is what we've got to start. And that's where bullying, this bullying epidemic is coming in. And I'm trying to teach kids to use the technique of fogging, right? So when they come back and say some horrible things to you, you turn around and, you look at them and you just go, is that so? Oh, and walk away. It deflates them, And it's just saying a quick comeback with confidence and looking them in the eye, even if you're shaking like crazy, but it's deflating their balloon, because it tells them, really, I don't care. Your input adds nothing of worth to my life, and I'm moving on. And I think if we can empower kids to do this more and more, we'll start stopping some people in their tracks. But it's it's hard, but I think it's something that we really, as adults, need to adopt. And if we're struggling, then how do you think your kids are? And so again, it's helping your kids understand, you know what, you're never going to see him again. Maybe he's going through some horrible things at home. And so, it's not you. The saying, it's not you, it's them, it's true. It really is. And it's trying to get them to understand that, yes, there are some things that you have no responsibility for, no accountability. And you have to say, I didn't like what you did. I think I'm a nice person. Move on.
So true. And I think it speaks to, this perspective change that we need to have in terms of, trying to, be grateful for the position that we're in, and look at the positives in terms of, what we surround ourselves with and what we don't surround ourselves with, as you're saying. And it shows as to, how hard it is to navigate throughout, these different means, because there's, as you're saying, there's people that will try to uplift you, but there's people that will try to bring you down. And you need to navigate in terms of, what you can be in control over.
Absolutely. And the thing is that this is going to go on through life. This is life, unfortunate. And right now, we're seeing a lot of hatred and negativity in the world. That doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah.
And, that doesn't mean monkey see, monkey do. It's saying, that comment made on TV was not appropriate. That was mean, and either reframe it or just say, for every behavior there is a reason. And so whilst you can try and be compassionate and understanding and say what he said wasn't very pleasant, and I think maybe he was just having a hard day, or maybe there's something going on in his life, that doesn't mean it's acceptable. And then coming back and saying, but that doesn't reflect who you are. And you can help people. What is it? You can drag a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah.
You can reach out compassionately to offer support or help to someone. If they kick you in the face and say, I'm not interested, then you have to walk away being the better person and say, I tried. He was not receptive. I'm moving on with my life. I have a good life. I have good friends. I can see, and it's enhancing kids' self-worth. I think kids have lost their own sense of self, their self-worth, because they're so caught up in the being liked and being accepted and looking a certain way. And if you don't have this phone, you don't belong. And that goes back to, again, what's in the home.
It certainly does. And, it brings about this, perspective of, as you're saying, you need to want to do the work as well. And
yes,
want to support the people around you. And, children can't take this initiative right away in order to seek those resources, but there's certainly people around children that can help uplift them and provide the resources for them. So, within this part, I think it was great to share about some of the issues within the mental health industry, as well as some of the challenges that people face. And, I thank you for taking this time with me, Tracey. And for everybody listening now, you can tune into part 2, where we'll speak specifically on bullying within children and more about, what children are facing today and what we can do in order to support them in these times of stress and discomfort. So thank you all for listening to the first part of episode number 16 with Tracey Maxfield, and be sure to tune into part 2 to hear more about bullying within the children, within that perspective and within that setting of what children face within the school setting today. So thank you all again for listening. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Mental Insights Podcast. Make sure to reach out to today's guest or myself if you need any advice, guidance, or support in your life today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and review to this podcast so we know what you thought of this episode. I look forward to being in touch with you all in the next episode. I hope you all have a wonderful day.